Well, welcome everyone to our Understanding Pictures tutorial. A particular point of departure for this tutorial about a key structural aspect of pictorial design. And what is it that we can know and do know about our tonal composition in particular? How has that component of all of our images, remembering the drawing, tonal and structural compositions that our images are made up out of, constructed from, that tonal composition excised and on its own, the luminance values in an image, and particularly presented as a black and white image, a black and white photograph, for example. How have we come to think about such things? And do we understand the black and white image with the same veracity and confidence and intensity that we have historically? And we're talking centuries and centuries of research, thinking and understanding as we have our colour image, our full gamut image, where all three compositions are at work. Now, to make sense of what I'm saying, let's have a look at those questions. And I've broken this into four key components because each begs a really interesting question in its own right. So here are the main topics for today. Beginning with this observation, we have done so much work, research, thinking, practicing over centuries about colour. But what about luminance values for a grayscale image? Not just the tonal composition of our full gamut images, but our grayscale. And then some real-world considerations. What about Ansel Adams? And with Fred Archer, the zone system that they developed more than a lifetime ago. And this principle of tonal representation in a system like the zone system, for example, doesn't say anything about the aesthetic distribution of tones within it. How much black, how much middle grey, highlights, and so on. And then another offering, the theory of colour proportions in interior design and what this entails. Is this something that could be applied as a general aesthetic principle, an organising, establishing principle, and affecting principle to the way we go about not just finding, capturing, but also redistributing tonal values within a grayscale black and white composition? But is there another way that you might suggest about creating aesthetically pleasing black and white images, and how tonality should be ideally combined and distributed and so on? This is a critical point of departure for this discussion, because this question begs another consideration, which is what can be known about what it is we're doing. So this is really a question about the ontology of grayscale, the ontology of luminance. We're now trying to understand what it is that we can bring to the evaluation of, and therefore our understanding of, and therefore the essence of the being of our grayscale images, how one might go about doing that. And why does my friend feel that has not been as thoroughly addressed as has the ontology of colour, the ontology of painting, what painting is, and so on? As I said, it's a fascinating thing for us to consider, because this Understanding Pictures workshop is devoted to such considerations. But for the sake of this tutorial, let's pull it back to luminance, lightness and darkness. It's about what is it in the tonal composition that announces itself as being a more pleasing, more beautiful perhaps, a more affecting in other ways, or reinforces my beliefs in what black and white photography should look like, and on it goes. If we look at a brief history of luminosity functions back to the original computation in 1931, there's all sorts of different functions combining red light and green light and blue light differentially. We see that a lot of scientific research has turned up all sorts of metrics to describe how we are meant to see the relative brightness of different colours. But hang on, that's just trying to explain and account for us, how we're meant to be and engaged with such things. But it doesn't say anything about this luminosity formula is more aesthetically pleasing than that luminosity formula. Okay, let's just try a few things and see how we respond to them. This continuous grayscale is encoded in Joseph Holmes' Chrome Space 100. So the distribution of continuous tonality from absolute black to absolute white in this digital scale, according to Joseph Holmes' handmade tonal curve. Now, of course, we have to compare and contrast it with other considerations. So let's assign some different profiles. What about Gamma 2.2, Adobe RGB? Joseph Holmes, Gamma 2.2. Joseph Holmes tone curve, Gamma 2.2, a very different rendering. What about ProPhoto RGB? Joseph Holmes, ProPhoto RGB, Gamma 1.8. sRGB, which is Gamma 2.2 with a tweak in the dark shadows. Joseph Holmes, sRGB. Now, just looking at this abstract continuous tone scale, how does any of these renderings make you feel? For example, ProPhoto with a gamma of 1.8 opens up the shadows and elongates the midtones and highlights. Is that more aesthetically pleasing? You see where I'm going with this? Of course it depends, doesn't it? Because at the moment I'm trying to remove the effect of the referent on our interpretation of what we're seeing by just having this continuous grayscale. I would hope most of you are looking at this with indifference because it's not a tear-stained face, it's not a magnificent vista, it's not anything in front of a lens that you devote yourself to, care about, and work on behalf of. Let's load an L-star profile. Hang on, I thought the lightness axis of our LAB color model was meant to be mapping how you and I see relative luminance as a default natural engagement with the world independently of luminosity, of the perceived brightness of specific colors. Joseph Holmes, lab lightness. Now, I don't know about you, but for decades now, I've thought Joseph Holmes' tonal scale is vastly more pleasing in the sense of my evaluating criteria being perceptual uniformity and equal tonal progression from black to white. There's Joseph Holmes. There's lightness. There's Joseph Holmes. I looked at this and I thought, that's so familiar. Then it dawned on me when I overlaid that curve with my preferred black and white film-based tonal scale was an incredible close match. So I find that tonal scale aesthetically pleasing. Doesn't mean that's universal, ideal, even though on the other side of the world I've found a compatriot who has come to similar conclusions decades and decades ago, just like I did at the speed of a dripping tap in my darkroom. At least there's two of us who agree on something. Maybe that's a move in the right direction. Better than just a singularity, isn't it? Sure, I get it. And this is the contradiction, isn't it? It is on the one hand, we seem hardwired to respond to certain stimuli in certain ways, but also very cultural and individual, which means it's also subjective. How do we reconcile the two? Let alone, is there an ideal aesthetic distribution of tones in a grayscale image to elicit these emotional states? And how do we tension them and so forth to elicit these other meanings, these other effects, these reinforcements of beliefs, or to establish other relationships and experiences? How do we reconcile this perceived subjectivity of aesthetic judgments? Someone's disappointment might be someone else's joy, and yet we more or less seem, the research indicates, to respond to similar stimuli in similar ways. Meaning is in the mind of the beholder. How do we reconcile this? I might show you a range of tones that trigger a response within us, but the way we individually respond to that trigger can be different. That's the subjectivity. So when you put it like that, it does seem to make sense, and it dissolves that potential contradiction, because we're not robots. We don't attribute the same meaning to the same stimuli. It's what we turn that response into. Consequently, if we look at that question from the workshop, how to make our images more interesting, in inverted commas, because of course that's a judgment. How to make them more interesting to more people is the question, not just myself. It's the referent, but it's also what we bring to that referent. how that referent is configured by some means, a 60-30-10 distribution rule, the zone system, whatever, as a mastery of control that then produces a tonal scale that produces for us the desired aesthetic effect here, independently of what's in front of the lens, the subject that matters to us. How do we make the rendering of that matter, not just to me, but to more people? So in answer to that fourth question, can you suggest another approach? Is there another way of conjuring up aesthetically pleasing black and white images that go beyond just my own individual preference, that become something affecting others in similar ways? So here's another possible approach, and I offer another way of telling, which is a precursor to the relativity of postmodernism taking over the world of pictorial design, certainly the world of photography in the early 1980s, as a wonderful example of the relativity of meaning that is now taken for granted. But then let's take someone, I'm going to use Robert Adams, an extraordinary body of work, a lifetime's contribution, black and white imagery, and going through image after image. Now, this is a physical publication, but even before we had works of art all over the internet for us to spend time with, we would photograph these reproductions. We would photograph the original prints. We produced histograms, distribution of values. We discovered this propensity of the grand masters of black and white, the Edward Westons, the Ansel Adams, particular tendencies, and we're talking hundreds of scans, this propensity that they repeated. Not every image, but in similar quantities. Oh, that is what it means to photograph in the style of Ansel Adams, Robert Adams, Edward Weston, Imogen Cunningham, Faye Godwin, William Clift, Cartier-Bresson. Name those that you care about. Certainly recommending this methodology of finding that artist whose work holds a special meaning for you, and then looking at the histograms, constructing them if they don't already exist, of the pictures that are most affecting, finding the commonalities that exist independently of subject that matters, the nature of the design principles with the structural elements of the tonal and drawing compositions in front of us, and how these great artists have gone about putting these values together in their tonal compositions in support of the drawing compositions, what is indeed in front of the lens, and thereby coming to your own tonal proportions. And this is where emulation seems to work as an artistic principle of how to achieve what it is you're trying to achieve. In this case, aesthetically pleasing black and white distributions that have an appeal potentially beyond just my own. By looking at great artists who have enormous influence, enormous effect on our understanding of the medium, not just curatorially, not just scholarly, not just emotionally, not just technically, zone system and so forth, but having a look at those propensities, trying them on for size, and then bit by bit through emulation, we end up putting all of these bits together within ourselves to create and develop our own style, our own oeuvre. Anyway, I conclude on that to then develop our own tonal scales that not only please us, but maybe then have the greatest opportunity to engage with others based on the emulation, the grandness that we try in part to incorporate. All right, look, as always, all of this is in the hope of answering some of these questions of yours and how we resolve those contradictions of our evolutionary response to certain stimuli. Underneath all of that, perhaps lies a communality that we can all share, engage with, and profit by in this wonderful world of art, and in particular, the world of photography that we love, adore, and share. Take care till next time. Wish you all the best. Cheers.